Chapter 1 The Witch of Wall Street. Amelia Vo Tanner arrived in New York City on June 22, 1972. She had a diploma from Southern University, a junior college in Shreveport, Louisiana, and a patent leather purse with $45 in cash and a bank check from her grandmother for $300 more. Amelia traveled by one train from New Orleans to Chicago and then another from Chicago to New York. The journey was long, but worth the trouble. On a warm summer morning, her train finally breezed into Grand Central Station. With her set of matching luggage, she can still remember the thrill of it, how she stood in the main concourse, staring up at the starry silhouette of Orion and the bright blue celestial ceiling. Just getting to New York was everything she had ever dreamed of. All that came after was just gravy. It was 2 p.m. in the afternoon, hours away from rush hour, and still the hall was packed. Men in suits and trench coats, ladies in smart dresses, and perfectly coiffed hair. They zoomed by her so fast, she had to check that they weren't wearing roller skates. Would she ever move so fast? She doubted it. She stepped out of the station, oriented herself, and headed south. On West 34th Street, she entered the Webster Apartments. It was an integrated boarding house for single women over the age of 18. Regardless of race, nationality, or religious belief. To qualify, a woman must show proof of employment at least 30 hours a week. Amelia had, through her college career office, landed a position as an executive secretary at Mayflower Advisors, a financial services firm on Wall Street. Dorothy Hadley, the boarding house director, was a prim woman with skin so pale that Amelia could see the veins in her hands. Mrs. Hadley went over the strict house rules. No ironing in the bedrooms. Irons were only allowed in the laundry. No male guests on the upper floors. Men were allowed only in the dining room, the drawing room, and the garden. Beds were to be made once a day. A housekeeper did a thorough cleaning once a week on Fridays. 2 meals per day were provided, breakfast and dinner. Beverages and small snacks, such as yogurt or cottage cheese, could be kept in the pantry refrigerator. No alcoholic beverages were allowed on the upper floors. Once a week, on Saturdays, there was a co-ed cocktail social. Each resident would be given 2 tickets a week, which entitled them to a glass of wine for themselves and a guest. The cost of the room was $150 a month, payable on the 1st. Amelia signed the lease agreement and took the key to her room on the 8th floor. It was tiny, no bigger than a garret, but from it she could see, or so it seemed, every rooftop in Manhattan. From the 8th floor, there was a staircase that led up to the roof deck. There she encountered 2 blonde women in oversized sunglasses laying out in their bathing suits. "Hi," the first one said. "I'm Libby, and this is Blythe." Blythe took off her sunglasses and beamed. "Welcome to the club, new girl." "Come sun with us," Livy said, oblivious to the fact that the tan Amelia was sporting from heritage, not sunbathing. "Oh, honey," Amelia said with a wink, "I was born with a tan, but you know what they say, the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. So let me change, and I'll be right back to join you." Amelia never let people think she was white, though she was lighter than Lena Horne, with green eyes and bone-straight hair. She carried her blackness up front. She was a proud black woman. And if people didn't guess that right away, she threw a little cayenne into her perfectly phrased English to make it clear. She couldn't help it if her ability to blend in made white people feel more comfortable. Within minutes, Libby and Blythe knew they had made their first black friends. By 1977, Amelia had worked as an executive assistant to Benjamin Walsh for 5 long years. Walsh was in his 40s, with Robert Redford hair and a similarly chiseled jaw. He was wealthy, connected, and a vice president at Mayflower Advisors. What he was not was bright. He tried to make a move on her, inviting her out for drinks, letting his hand rest too long on her shoulder. Then, when he thought her silence was permission, he closed the door to his office and put his arms around her waist. Then, one afternoon, when he came back from lunch, he found her in his office, chatting away on his phone to what appeared to be a girlfriend. "Get off the phone," he said. "Get out of my office." He couldn't believe her, the cheekiness it took to make a personal call at his desk. She smiled at him and said into the phone, "Sure thing, Mrs. Walsh. I will certainly get you my grandmother's recipe for etouffee. I think your husband will love it." Then, after wishing her boss's wife a good day, she hung up the phone. Benjamin Walsh stood silent, fuming at his desk. "Watch yourself, sugar," she said, "or the next call I make to your wife will not be about recipes." After that, he turned his attention to the other secretaries on the floor. The 1970s were a terrible time, not just for the business, but for the country. Watergate and the oil crisis had sent the economy into a tailspin. The market nosedived 45% in 1 year, and it seemed to the brokers, who had once believed that trading stocks was just a means of printing money, that everything they touched turned to dust. Benjamin Walsh managed a mutual fund, and his clients were protected only by the relatively low percentage of risky stocks in the portfolio. Walsh followed the industry trends and took long 3-martini lunches with colleagues in the name of research. Every night at dinner, the young women around the Webster Apartments dining table complained about how they were practically doing their bosses' jobs for them. Over plates of poached salmon and wedges of iceberg lettuce, they passed around copies of Miss Magazine, strategized and made plans. Some planned to marry their way into prosperity, but even that seemed fraught with pitfalls. Married women still have to get their husband's signature to get a credit card, Liddy said. That's bullshit. Language, Mrs. Hadley said. From the butler's pantry, she did not even need to be in the room to sense when the young women were falling out of line. Feminism she could tolerate, boorish behavior she could not. "You know, Amelia," Blythe said from across the table, "I read a story in the paper that black men are much more enlightened when it comes to women's rights than white men. Apparently, the sentiment